Hello, welcome to another Run Wild with Us. Ask Us Anything. I'm Lisa Kastner. I am the founder and CEO of Running Wild and RIZE Presses, and I am here with you every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, along with some of our editors from Running Wild and Rise to answer whatever questions you may have. It could be about publishing, it could be about editing, it could be about the creative process, it could be about the acquisition process, whatever you want. You can ask me about my cat who's behind me right now getting her sleep on. I'm sure she would absolutely adore questions about her because she's a cat. So, with that, I want to thank everyone who is joining us. I think we always have a really great conversation. We have a blast with individuals who join us each week. If you are watching this and it is not Thursday between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. Pacific time or 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern time, that is completely fine. Because what you can do, you can go ahead and pop your questions into the comments section, and we'll go back and we'll check it out every week to kind of see what other questions you guys may come up with. Now, if you're watching it, it is between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific time and 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Eastern time. That is also phenomenal because what you can do is go ahead and pop your questions into that comment section. And Ben and Ben, who's one of our amazing acquisition editors, as well as broad stroke editors too, we're more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. So, and live and in person. So, and honestly, why don't you introduce yourselves? Tell us who you are, what you're into, why you're joining us, because we'd absolutely love to hear that from you as well. And so, with that in mind, I'd love to say, hey Ben, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. I had a bizarre week, admittedly. I ended up in the emergency room on Friday night with a raging ear infection. And it was so
No.
severe. The doctor actually, when he looked at it, went, wow, now that's an infection. And I said, I'm sitting there and I'm like, is he being sarcastic? Or is because it's like 2 in the morning, right? I'm like, you know, or is this like for real? And before when they were checking me out, he actually came back to let me know, like, oh no, that's a really bad infection and you need to go lie down. And I was like, okay. So I spent my weekend basically sucking down antibiotics and painkillers, and which reminds me I should probably take a painkiller. And just getting as much sleep as I possibly could. Man, those puppies, they really tire you out. I mean, I would feel fine for like 10 minutes, right? And then I'm thinking, I'm fine, and then I'd go up and I'd go walk around and do something. And then, like, not, I doubt a half hour passed. And I was like, I'm exhausted. This is crazy. So, it's slowly, at least the stink has decreased because, phew, that smell was horrific. But yeah, so that's how my week started. And then I'll tell you about news that I got all of last night. But first, I want to re- note Caroline said, "Oh no, I know about those ear infections. Did it hurt?" That's what got me in the emergency room because I actually had the ear infection for like 2 weeks beforehand. And I figured, like, all the research I did on treating an ear infection, it was like, well, do warm compresses and, just take ibuprofen to keep the swelling down and, allow it to drain. And I thought, okay, sure. And then, oh my gosh, Friday night, I was in so much severe pain that I actually questioned if I could even drive myself to the ER. And locally, one was close enough to my house that I was able to make it there. But oh my, I couldn't believe it. It was real. It was crazy bad. So they prescribed for me horse pill ibuprofen to make sure I had enough that also would help reduce the swelling. Don McIntyre says, "Hey there, have either of you ever done NaNoWriMo? And I hope you feel better, Lisa." Thank you. I don't. Uh, Don's like, I don't know why I give you someone else's name. I go by many names. It's all good. You could call me whatever you want. I don't. It's fine. You'd be shocked at what I'll actually respond to. Um, Ben, how about you? Have you ever done NaNoWriMo?
Is that the novel in November?
Hmm. Yeah, it's that free write thing, I think.
Yeah. No, I haven't.
So
And
no,
no,
keep.
no.
So I've never gone. Like I have friends that will set up targets, right? Like they'll say,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna knock out the first draft of blah blah blah, and I'm gonna do it during the month of NaNoWriMo. I think NaNoWriMo may actually be the month of October now. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. Because I know a bunch of people are talking about it now, like they're preparing for it. But I personally have not done it. Honestly, though, I think it's smart. I mean,
Yeah.
if you've got something that you want to it's bigger, it's larger, longer in form, and you want to knock it out. NaNoWriMo is a great opportunity to really, knock that out. So, yeah,
And I think it's a community of writers. That, you're not in it by yourself. You're doing something that other people are doing. So there's whether it's a friendship mindset or a competition mindset, it doesn't matter. You get it written. That's what
right.
matters. And whatever drives you to write it is a good thing.
Yeah, Dawn says I've never had that much free time, and I suspect neither of you do either. That would be accurate. Although the only way I was able to knock out Cure was I mapped out the book structure, and then I told myself, okay, I have to write minimally. I think it was like 2,000 words a day or something like that, maximum like 5,000 words. That got me to finish it because what it made me do is reprioritize everything else that I had on my plate. Um, so Don or is Caroline, I think. Yeah, Caroline's saying I never heard of it. I'm gonna include in the chat a link because there's actually a site where you can sign up for NaNoWriMo. It's interesting. I remember when NaNoWriMo didn't have its own site. I remember when it was really more of a writers group, a writers community, um, organized event. And I remember when a lot of, to Ben's point, like a lot of local people would kind of get together, and everyone would agree that they were all gonna do this together, and you had to check in and report back to your fellow writers on like what you were doing and what you got done and all that kind of stuff. So it can be fabulous. I mean, it really can be a wonderful experience. um like I said, especially if you do have a longer work that you want to knock out. But I do agree, Donna. I've never really had that much time. I've never had the ability to say, okay, for this entire month, I'm gonna knock something out. But I am good at, if I allow myself and I say, okay, this is gonna be my target. I want to get this done. Um, per day. That I'm good at. And I know Ben does that too, right? Ben, don't you write every single day?
Yes. Usually poems. Uh, I do have that novel out there waiting for. Actually, I've got 3 or 4 novels where the characters are just stuck in time.
Mm.
It's really sad. they're out there waiting for me. Where'd you go? What do I do next? What do I do next?
Mm. Now
I'm getting back to them.
I admit I have the follow-up to Cure that actually I've had like 4 people in the last 3 days ask me about. So, I need to, my current target that I set for myself was to read at least a half hour a day every day, and that's because I have stacks and stacks and stacks of books. on my bedside that have been there. Some have been there for quite a while, and I think I'm gonna have to uh, reshuffle my goal and make it one to write at least 1,000 words a day, every day, so that I can knock out the follow up to cure. And I'll be honest though, for me, when I set goals like that as well, I usually have to start it on a weekend, because to I need to have a couple of hours where I'm writing. I've written like, more like 3 or 4,000 words. So I've got the world in my head, right? I'm really starting things off at a nice pace. And then that way, because I've already kind of set the groundwork, then it makes it much easier for me to write like 1,000 or more words for the subsequent days. So I hope that makes sense. Caroline says, "Yes, I like that you both write in a time frame." You know what? I think, considering we both have day jobs, if not multiple day jobs, and we both have a lot of, we're both very active with Running Wild. We're both very active with RIZE, and we're both writers, and we're both, we do editing on the side. I think we have to give ourselves those kinds of targets. Don't you think, Ben?
Oh yes, it's I would miss it. That's what 4 o'clock in the morning is for. That's what it's all about. And I would miss it. Even when I know I have to do something else in the morning, I will make sure that I get up even earlier so I have that dedicated time in the morning to write. And it's, of course, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning is very quiet and it's very conducive to writing. And nobody is asking, "Hey, what you doing?"
Jeffrey Oliver says, "Hello. Hope you're both well. Can't stay long, but wanted to say hi." Hey, Jeffrey. It is awesome to see you. And Jeffrey is also a member of our Running Wild family. So, by the way, so is Caroline, and
Don and
so
Don
is
as well.
Dawn. And honestly, I love seeing you guys. I think it's so much fun to see you guys here, and I love it when you check in. It's just a blast. I forget. I think I was watching a video with David Sanderson. Oh, that's my Siri going off, deciding it's going to respond to me talking, which is quite interesting. Um, I was watching a video with David Sanderson, and well, Jeffrey, I know that you submitted work to us, and we've been in conversation, so I consider you part of our family.
You're a
But
frequent flyer on Thursdays.
yeah, you're a freaking flyer on Thursdays. Um, so the video with David Sanderson, he was talking about how he had to convince his family not to bug him while he was writing, because he writes a lot of really, like, I guess you could say, higher fantasy work, with unique universes where you really have to stay focused in it, because if you get distracted to do something else, and it takes a while to get back into the story. And so Ben's comment on, getting up at 3 4 in the morning so that he could stay focused is, yeah, totally feel that. I think a lot of authors can associate with that. Caroline says, "I have a time frame when I am working on a book, 4 hours a day." Wow, I admire you. That's amazing. I need that.
All at
And
once.
I know, right? And always finish with the start of the next day's work. The first paragraph. It's a discipline. You know what? That is a really great point. Caroline's suggestion of, when you're writing, knock out a big chunk for give yourself a couple of hours, and then the next day start with like the last paragraph, and that kind of gets you back in the story. That is a really smart thing. I actually know several authors that what they do is they basically go back and edit the last chapter that they had last written, and then continue the story from there, which is also a really really smart way to move it forward. Caroline says, "Thank you. Love the connection with both of you, and obviously we love you too. As always, we love our extended family." So Caroline does the same thing at 5 in the morning. See, Ben? See
That's
what
three
kind of
o'clock my
influence you
time.
have? That's 3 o'clock your time. Oh God, that would suck. I get up at
That's
four
two
ten
o'clock
in the
your time.
morning. Uh,
That's when you go to bed.
that's right. So CJ Grant, hey CJ, good evening. Are you more of a plotter or a pantser? How about you, Ben? Plotter or pantser?
I need an operational definition for a pantser. CJ, help
You
me
make
out.
you make crap up as you go along.
Oh, okay. I usually find myself letting the characters take over, and so it's my characters are pantsers,
Oh, that's hilarious.
and they'll let if you let them, they will use their own personalities to take the story where it needs to go, and that's when I see my writing hit a plane to where it just writes itself, and that's a good plane to be on. But it's usually character driven, and I let them take over. Yeah, your characters are pantsers. Yes, they are, and uh, they'll have personality traits that will surprise me, and that's good too. That's good too.
Yeah, I'm a weird combination of a plotter and a pantser. So I will plot out um the core story elements that I think need to occur, that kind of acts as a guide. But then what happens is, as I'm writing, I'm completely with Ben. My characters tell me what's going on. They tell me what, like, I may write something where I think one character is going to do something, and when I'm in the middle of writing it, the character's like, "Screw you! I would never do that." And it goes a completely different way. And I'm like, "Okay, well, this is fascinating." But then what I end up doing is, like, the last bit of my writing for that day will be to go back and go through my outline and see how the characters have chosen to respond and truly act, how that has influenced or impacted the story moving forward. And then I'll revise the outline based on how the characters have truly behaved.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I was
um,
I was
go
thinking
ahead.
of a story. It's unpublished. I wrote it in 1986. You remember anybody remember 1986? Um, and it's called The Pumpkin Man. It's a Halloween story. That's we're almost there. I need to dig it out. But
You do.
the original idea was to have the character show up on a, a milk carton as a missing kid, but it ended up that his body parts were found in a pumpkin when they were cutting out a jack o' lantern.
Ew,
So
that's nasty.
he said, "I don't want to be on a milk carton. I want to be in the pumpkin." I said, "Okay, you're in."
Ew. Well, it works though. It's a good Halloween
Yeah,
story.
I like that
Ro
ending better because it gets that reaction. It gets that ooh reaction.
well, you just said that to be gross anyway. It's fine.
Yeah.
Um, Rod Gilly writer says, "I'm 100% a pantser. It's so fun to let the story lead your fingers on the keyboard." Yep, I agree. It's very fun to discover who these people are and what the heck they're doing and why they're even showing up. So, Jeffrey Oliver says, "Wonder what the term is for not thinking while you write." I don't know. Ben,
Transcendent.
you want what is it?
Transcendent.
Transcendent.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's you could call it in the zone, you could call it up on a higher plane, you could call it just creative motivation. But I think when the focus and the in the flow, so psychologists would call it in the flow, but it's where time is not a concept to worry about. The characters and the writing are the process that you're focused on. So
Hmm,
it is transcendent. You've risen above all else to focus on something you enjoy, that creative aspect of writing.
hmm.
I'm sticking with transcendent.
I like it. Sounds fancy. It sounds intellectual. You know,
That's me,
um,
fancy and intellectual.
it's totally you. It's 100% you. Uh, so CJ says, I usually know the inciting incident and the ending, and the characters take it from there. I actually know quite a few, or I can't say quite a few. I know several authors that they do exactly CJ what you just described. They sit down and they figure out like, okay, who are my primary characters and what do I want the ending to be, and then they just kind of go for it. And that can be a really fun way. I think that works for me. That works really well for like a short story or a novella. But when I'm writing a novel or a longer form, I need at least a couple more points to kind of point me in the right direction, if that makes sense. So, Caroline says, laughing, love your characters telling you how to respond, getting out of your head into what the character feels. And she loves your definition, Ben.
Yeah, I should have written it down.
You should. You should have written it
Yeah,
down. That's all right. You can come back and watch this again and then go, oh, that's what I
that's
said.
it's recorded. That's right. I've got it
Damn it.
recorded. That's right.
Yeah. Now I know how
Very
brilliant I
nice.
am. Rod Gilly says, it does, however, make for tough rewrites and revisions. My current work in progress novel took 3 months to write first draft. 6 months later, I'm still revising. I could see that. I mean,
Yeah.
I know people that, I think the first novel I ever wrote, I was 26, 27, something like that. And I totally pantsed it. And it started off as like horror and then somehow turned into a mystery and then became like a rom com. Don't ask me, I don't know. And I just want to thank anybody who was kind enough to read that piece of crap that I put out there. But I did. I revised it. I was revising it for like 2 3 years, and then I actually didn't start being more of a pantser. That then also does free writing. I want to say until 6 or 7 years ago, and it was because I like really complex stories, and I like complex stories with like multiple points of view and that kind of thing. And I realized that if I wanted to do it effectively, then I really needed to at least at a high level map out like what, you know, who's going to own this chapter, right? And then who's going to own this chapter. And then that, even just having that as a guideline would enable me to then write it more effectively. It doesn't mean that I still didn't have, several months of editing afterwards. It just meant that I wasn't making revisions for like, 5 years. So, I don't know, Ben, how about you? Do you find yourself, oh, well, you just said that you've been writing what, like 3 novels for,
Yeah, for years.
for
It's
years?
they're all great ideas. They are all great ideas,
Hmm.
and the
Now,
characters are very interesting. And they're just mad at me now because I've left them hanging. But
now, did you do any kind of like any kind of mapping out of the stories, or did you just completely pants it?
it's more like CJ's approach, where you have an idea of maybe a beginning, and then as you think it through, where would that end? But
Mm,
so many times I find that the characters will change the ending and as they go. So we don't want like the milk carton. I don't want to be on a milk carton. I want to be chopped up in a pumpkin. And so the uh, the the characters will change it. And I was thinking of Triggerfish 1 2
oh
that
yeah.
Running Wild published. It's it's 4 poems. It's a series of 4 poems that are totally disconnected, except the scene where the location. Um,
Mm,
but the idea for Triggerfish 1 2 was, I carried it around with me in my head for 2 3 years. What if a soldier was on patrol at Woodstock, and
mm,
if he was in Vietnam, but he woke up and had to patrol through Woodstock. So that's where that whole idea started of how do you get that soldier from Vietnam to Woodstock. So I gave him a head injury, and he
mm.
can go anywhere now. So, but it was, but the that inciting incident was just an idea of what would a Vietnamese or a Vietnam soldier on patrol in country do if you woke up at Woodstock? What would the, the cognitive dissonance be? Which was
Mm,
fun to work with.
yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Caroline says, love hearing how you two do it. And that's because you do a good job, Ben, of developing and knowing your characters. She's right. Just saying, because I'm the one who edited Triggerfish 123 or
yeah,
12, and I edited the narrative poem
yeah.
collection that we published. Well, now, don't you want to talk though about the collection that you literally just published all of? What was it, today or yesterday?
The always ready,
Yeah,
the Coast Guard poems, of course, it's out.
tell us about them.
Yeah, it was actually released on August 4th, the Coast Guard's birthday, because why not? How could you not do that? And it's being shopped around, sent to libraries and reviewers, and gaining some traction. But it's basically, uh, those of you who have visited us before know that I've talked about a poemoir and the genre that I created. Yes, I created it, Lisa.
Oh, excuse me.
It's all mine. But
Ah,
a memoir in poem form, and the always ready poems. It's life. It's poems from a life in the United States Coast Guard. They
mm,
were actually actual events that happened, and just to capture them and say this is life in the Coast Guard. A lot of people don't know. No, there's so much literature about the Army and Marines and Navy, even the Air Force, but very few books or a handful of movies. You've got The Guardian, if
mm,
with Kevin Costner in the Coast Guard. A funny story about The Guardian: when it came out, I was still in, and there was debate in the Coast Guard that, as someone was saying, it just doesn't seem realistic. And then somebody said, "Well, wait a minute. He's an alcoholic, divorced petty officer or chief petty officer. That's pretty realistic.
eh,
Look around." But so the stories are
okay.
everywhere. The point is, no matter where you are or what you do, you've got stories to capture. And whether you project it onto your characters or whether you write about it in a first person poem to tell the story, that's the key, and that's the interesting part of
Mm,
writing, whether it's fiction or creative nonfiction or just historical nonfiction. There's so much creativity that's in there that it's worth doing. So you're in the right place, talking to the right people.
Now, what made you pick the Coast Guard out of curiosity of all of the service areas?
Yeah, and I joined the Coast Guard in New Mexico because I grew up in Kentucky, but Kentucky wasn't landlocked enough. I had to come to New Mexico to join the Coast Guard, and
Okay.
I had two. I had 2 years in the Army already,
Mm,
and so I got out of the Army and then went to school, got the degree, the bachelor's degree, and I went back to the Army and asked if they would send me to officer candidate school. And the recruiter said, "Yes, yes, we will. We're glad to see you come back. Glad to have you." And I said,
oh, wow.
"Great." What would my military occupational specialty be? And the
Hmm.
recruiter said, "Well, you were infantry before, you'll be infantry again." And I said, "Oh, well, I've kind of done that." And I was just about to get married and going off to 17 weeks of infantry school again
Was
wasn't
not.
as appealing to a newlywed as the deal that I got when I crossed the street and talked to the Coast Guard. And they said,
Mm,
"Well, you we're small and we can't send you to officer candidate school right away, but why don't you come back in enlisted? We'll send you to 3.5 weeks of prior service indoctrination," which is in the book. There's a poem about prior service indoctrination in 3.5 weeks,
oh,
because basically we watched MTV, got our uniforms, and left. That was indoctrination to the Coast Guard. Just be the military people you are, and you'll be fine. Here's your uniform. Go in there and watch some MTV.
wow.
We said, "Great, this is cool." But so that was enticing to a newlywed to be away for 3.5 weeks instead of 17 weeks. So
That's
it was
great.
it was it was strategic. It was a strategic choice. And,
It sounds
and then 20
strategic.
years later, it was a good place to retire from, and then go write
Mhm.
about it.
And you're still married.
And still married 35 years. It'll be
Wow.
35 years on October 15th. We got
Oh
married
my
at
goodness.
5:30 in the morning on a Thursday.
Wow. What made you
Yeah,
do that?
that's a story in itself.
I'm hearing
But
that.
actually, that's the tease that is the most interesting, because the rest of it is just, oh yeah, makes sense. We were on a fall break from school, and we wanted to get married on my in-laws' wedding anniversary,
Mm,
and it happened to be on a Thursday. We were off school, and we were headed to Hawaii for the honeymoon, and the plane left at 7:30. So we said, well, if we want to get married, if we want to be married when we go on the honeymoon, we should do it early. So
mm.
we got married at 5:30 in the morning in the best man's apartment, and his future father-in-law was the preacher that married us. He was a police chaplain.
Wow, that's
It all
cool.
fell apart. We had I think 11, 13 people were there. Nobody had the cake though. It was too early.
Well, I'm sure you got something when you got to Hawaii.
Yeah, we got a fruit bowl with pineapple. That's
That sounds
nice.
right. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Uh, so Caroline says, "Do you both think it is because so much happens on a subconscious level with our work? I take naps and dream it when I get stuck."
Yeah. And I've often thought about that. The poems or the stories that come from dreams
Mm,
are they're usually pretty good. They're worth capturing, and so let the subconscious take over when it can, and you'll come up with sometimes you you may be looking at a place in your novel that I don't know where to go from here. Sleep on it, and you'll find the answer. The answer will come to you. Or some people would exercise. Take a jog and see if it comes to you, because there's no such thing as blocks. There's just different activities that you have to do to reach it and
mm.
run around it. So it's the I think a lot happens on that subconscious level, and I think Lisa would agree.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think there are different, like, I guess you could say, tricks to like there are visualization techniques that some people use when they're going about to go to bed, like envisioning themselves like entering into the world that they need to write about, and then uh, basically allowing their subconscious to kind of guide what happens within the story while they're dreaming it. And but you can still have control of the characters. So it's actually a really cool visualization technique. It's one I've used several times. But to both, I think, Caroline and Ben's point, um, it's amazing, not only from a writing perspective, but in life in general, how much your subconscious resolves when you're sleeping, or like when you're working out, right? You allow yourself to be disconnected from whatever your typical daily routine is. And it really, it just kind of allows your subconscious to come in and say, you know what? I can figure this out. You come back in like an hour or two, and then we can talk about it, right? And then the next thing you know, you're like, "Oh, I know exactly how this is going to go." So, Caroline says, "So when did the realization hit you, Ben? The depth of what you speak of in our book about war. It's so excellent. Truth on display of war."
Well, I think it goes back to the experience. I grew up watching Walter Cronkite and the Body Count every evening,
Mm.
and then when I did join the army, which people who knew me then said, "You're what? You?" Yeah, I'm going to go to the army. Watch this. Stand back. But the drill sergeants were all Vietnam veterans who stayed in the organization,
Mm.
and you if you watch and listen, you pick up so many nuances of their experience, that of not necessarily that they're telling you about their experience, but you see how the experience made them different, made them the way they are.
Mm,
And you pick up on that and say, well, how would, then you can imagine it and put yourself in their position. How would I have handled the situations that they're talking about? Not necessarily the drill sergeants at boot camp, but the other sergeants after boot camp, and you got to hear their stories, and they had stories, and so you ask yourself, how would I have responded, or how would a character that I want to develop respond in that situation? So to
mm-hmm,
take that experience, and there's of course there's a danger of misappropriation that I've talked about before here. You don't want to misappropriate somebody else's experience, but I equated it to uh, Stephen Crane's Red Badge of Courage. He was not in the Civil War. Everybody thinks he was, but he was not. That novel was published way after the Civil War, and he
mm-hmm,
was way too young to have fought. But he had the ability, the creative ability to project what a human would do in that situation. So I think that was the approach that I liked in the Recon trilogy, from Triggerfish to the Scarecrow Angel.
mm,
Scarecrow Angel comes back and visits a soldier uh, who's on watch. The Scarecrow Angel was his childhood imaginary friend, his childhood angel that came back. Uh, an idea stolen from William Blake.
mm-hmm,
I think it's called The Angel, a poem called The Angel. But the other one is El Dorado, where the soldier meets a a revolutionary from the Mexican Revolution on a bus on the way he was flying out to Vietnam, and he met the
mm-hmm,
Mexican Revolution soldier who had fought with Pancho Villa, and the stories that he told the soldier going to Vietnam helped him survive Vietnam. And actually, he shows up in Vietnam with another head injury. You give somebody a head injury, you can do anything. But the
clearly.
the bus pulls up in Vietnam, and the old soldier is called El Dorado because Pancho Villa's elite guard were called El Dorados.
Mm,
He steps off the bus and he says, "It's good to be back." And he's got his pistols and bandoleros on, and he helps the soldier get back to base, and kind of saves him. But it's all based on what they would have talked about on the bus that came back to the mind of the soldier to help him. Of course, he wasn't really in the jungle. But the Mexican soldier was in the jungle. The real soldier was.
mm,
But so it's a matter, I think, of just projecting the human experience into whatever situation you want to write about, and then do it. You've got to do a little research to make it ring true. But if you pay attention, that's easy to capture.
mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So Rod says, I think you may have a fine novella there. Well, I hope so. Jeffrey says, it's from the soul. Absolutely. Anything that's coming from your subconscious is coming from your soul. So if it's terrifying, then you might want to wonder what the heck is going on.
Yeah, you may scare your children.
You may, yeah, exactly. You may scare your children or your significant other, or they may
Yes.
just kick you out of the bed. That could happen too. Right?
Yeah, you
Just sort
did
of
what?
depends. What?
Man, you're
Get
rough.
out. Time for you out. Oh, okay. Thanks. So, uh Jeffrey says, keep them wondering. Well, as long as they don't kick you out permanently, it's all good, right? We got a good couch somewhere, maybe
Yeah,
a spare bed, so it's totally fine.
it's just a story, honey. It's just a story.
It's just a story. I don't know what my subconscious was doing. So I'll go. How about I get you ice cream, and then you let me back. uh, so I actually was gonna mention we had this one author. Her name is Suzanne Samples, and Suzanne Samples was one of the very first authors that we published a full length memoir of. Um, in oh gosh, I think yeah, it was like 5 years ago, something like that. And I still remember the day that I saw her submission, and I was just so blown away by this memoir. And it was about her experience being diagnosed with brain cancer, and the battle that she had, and the really human experience it was of having um of brain not only having brain cancer, but like staying engaged and with her family and her friends. And it was dark, and it was funny, and it was just, I mean, really brilliantly written. And I still remember when I called one of our editors and I said, I would love it if you would consider this, because I think you would make a great editor for her. And the editor, her name's Barbara Lockwood, said, "Yeah, sure. I'll look at it. We'll see." And she read the first. She was going to read the first page, and ended up reading like the first 20 pages and said, "I am all in." And that book became Frontal Matter, Glue Gone Wild. It was one of the first books that we had that was named among the best of 2019 by Kirkus Reviews. It received tons of stellar reviews. She went on a phenomenal book tour when she went into remission, and actually did the book tour with her sister. So they would do these appearances on like NPR and these different radio shows together, and share these like crazy stories about like growing up, and providing the perspective both from someone who has been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and a family member who obviously cares dearly for her. And we then went on to publish Stargazing in Solitude, which was about so what happens when you're now in remission and basically everyone kind of goes away, right? What does that mean? And what is that like? Hence, Stargazing in Solitude. And she also talked about how, with that form of cancer, it impacted a portion of her brain where basically she couldn't lie. And so what was happening, hence the in solitude, because what would happen is if she was in conversation with somebody, she would always tell the truth. And let's say not everybody wants to hear the truth. And I'm sure anybody over the age of 5 has found this to be true. And so, she wrote about, her experiences with that. And we recently, I mean, literally, like no joke, literally last week, just received the final edits for her third and final memoir, 13 Tunnels, that we will be publishing in 2023. And that's about her third phase of fighting terminal brain cancer. And we were informed last night that Suzanne actually passed away in hospice on September 17th. And I just want to say, I mean, she was such an amazing human being. She was absolute, I mean, seriously, she was absolutely brilliant, completely just incredibly kind, incredibly generous. At one point, I had gotten a note from a cancer support group that said that they were giving away frontal matter glue gone wild to people who were newly diagnosed with terminal cancer, because there was just so much solace that they found within the words within her story. It was so wonderful to know that they weren't alone, and that any kind of uh, uh, treatment or any kind of diagnosis like that, you feel so alone. And to know that not only is someone there who knows and understands and gets it, but that can kind of help guide you through that period of time, is just, it's such a huge gift that she has given everyone who has either read her work and that will now have access to her work, hopefully, as far as I'm concerned, forever, um, through Running Wild, is tremendous. If you go to her website, or if you go to some comments, that there's some she was nominated for various awards and things through the Cancer Society, and someone commented how they were amazed that she was in the middle of treatment and she literally still could not move half of her body, and yet she was writing her memoir. And they just were like, why in the world are you doing this? And she just was like, I've got to do it. I'm not wasting time. I don't have time to waste. And so she spent the last 5 years doing just that, not wasting time. So I just wanted to thank Suzanne for everything, all the amazing gifts she's given the world. And I look forward to us bringing even more of those fantastic gifts to everyone in the coming years. So now back to the less serious topics. um, so Jeff says, "Have a wonderful night." Thank you, Jeffrey. We appreciate it. You have a wonderful night as well. Caroline says, "Yes, Ben, I am always astonished at how writers like us write. So much happens on another level that is hard to explain unless you've experienced it." Rod Gilly says, "My novel is a paranormal thriller. Cool. My wife has slept with one eye open for months. I don't blame her. I don't even want to know what you've been telling this poor woman. Uh, I tell her it's just imagination, not actually me. Naming Stephen King as an example didn't help my case at all. Well, I hear Stephen King's actually a really nice guy, uh, but who knows on another level? Maybe he's not as nice as he comes across." Rod says, "We are reading Pet Cemetery at the moment." I can see why your wife's afraid of you. I don't know. Just saying. Caroline says, "What a wonderful gift Suzanne left others." Yeah, I completely agree. I just hope that we are blessed enough that we can have as much, if not as much of an impact as Suzanne has had on individuals and on the world. So she's pretty much a huge rock star as far as I'm concerned. Um, so all right, Ben, we've got 13 minutes.
uh, Speaking of Stephen King as the example, reminded me that I was stationed in New Orleans for 6 years, and Anne Rice has a house on First Street in the Garden District, just
Mm,
outside the French Quarter. And on her second story balcony, she had this giant wolf
okay.
statue thing, and I think it kept the evil spirits away. Maybe, I don't know. But it's the lives of the authors that you admire are worth studying and seeing what they're really like, and so it's seeing where they come from and seeing what they're really what they're really about. Stephen King, I'm sure, is a great guy.
Have you ever heard the story about how Anne Rice wrote Interview with a Vampire?
No,
Now I don't know if this is true or not. So, but I've
well,
heard
that's
it
good
several.
already.
Right? Hey. But I have heard it several times. So what I heard was like she had written several things in the past, and she was in mourning. I don't remember for whom, but she was in mourning, and she was raging drunk and basically locked herself up in her room, in her office in her house, and decided that she was just going to knock this book out. Somehow, she was inspired by the most recent events in her life, and she basically wrote it over the course of like a long weekend. Again, just completely trashed out of her mind. So that but by the time she actually exited her office, at least the first draft of Interview with a Vampire had been drafted. So I don't know what that tells anybody else who's watching. I don't know if that's either inspiration or if you're like, oh, I'm never doing anything like that. But if you read Interview with a Vampire with that lens on, it kind of adds a whole nother interesting bit of complexity to the story. So CJ Grant says, thanks for doing this live event. Have a great night. Thanks, CJ. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, it's fabulous to see folks coming in and just asking questions and interacting with us. We absolutely love it. Rod Gilly says, may I ask, do you have a tentative release date for Running Wild Press Anthology Volume 6? Do you mean, Rod, are you talking about uh, the short story or the novella anthology? Because we publish both. And then Rod says, I recently read the original text of Frankenstein. I'm working on a book review video for it. I've never seen a movie that really told the true story. Have you of Frankenstein? I actually think the story of Frankenstein is pretty brilliant. Um, and no, I've never seen anybody uh, actually do a true interpretation of it, but I don't think you have to. I think that's what's so brilliant about really great stories is that you can take the nugget of that idea of that concept and then expand upon it in different forms. And a lot of times, honestly, um, a literal translation of what was written in a short story or novel, it may not actually work very well as a TV show or as a film. So it's kind of interesting to see how others may expand upon that concept. So in the meantime, I'll let Ben talk and I'll look up for you the uh, release
Volume
date
six short
for
story. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because in Frankenstein, when I read it, I was struck that there was no Boris Karloff electric storm or mad mad laboratories dealings going on, but that's what Hollywood did with it. And Hollywood does that with many stories to make them what they're not, using the nugget like Lisa says. Um, and somehow she put 700-page story into less than 200 pages. And it was a bet. Have you heard the backstory there? I'll mess it up with my interpretation of it, but I think it was uh, William Blake was there and Shelley was there, and they kind of made a bet to who can come up with the scariest story, and she said, well, I think I can. I said, well, you're a woman, you you can't. And then she outdid them all. And with
Good
you
for
remember
her.
Frankenstein more than anybody. Yeah. And but it was kind of came about like a bet just between among writers. So there's no telling what sparks the creativity. Sometimes it's that challenge. You can't write that. Yes, I can. Watch this. And Caroline says the best writers leave help for others in some form or another. I'm hoping with the whole body of my work that is what I leave. Help. Understanding how to get through tough times in life, a little bit of a roadmap. And a little bit of roadmap will get you a long way. And and it's like look at him coming. Oh, that's you posting. I
Yeah,
thought I was
sorry.
way behind on the questions. I'm not doing this right.
No. Uh
But
yeah,
I
so
think a little bit of roadmap is what we all hope to lead, and especially with writers, what you write, if it's read or not while it's here, if somebody picks it up and reads it later. Um, I was I was reading Emerson the other day.
mhm.
Just because that's what I do when I'm sitting around not doing anything. I read Ralph
Yeah,
Waldo Emerson,
why not?
and in his essay Culture, he mentioned an old English poet who said, "A boy is better unborn than untaught." And
Huh.
and he didn't give a first name for the poet, so I looked it up. And the internet, that source of reliable information the internet is, had the quote attributed to Paul Gascoigne,
Hmm.
who is a modern day soccer player. And it hit me that, well, George Gascoigne would have been very proud to see that his quote, "A boy is better unborn than untaught," would be
Mm,
validated by the internet.
that's funny.
And so it's just a little bit of my roadmap there, Caroline. But Rod Gilly says in many ways women have outdone men ever since, and probably long before.
Yep.
Having been raised in a circle of strong women, I would totally agree. I You remind me of cousin Molly. I don't know whose cousin she was, but she was like two generations ahead of me. And when cousin Molly's husband died, oh, somebody asked her, "Molly, aren't you sad? Aren't you going to cry?" And cousin Molly said, "Child, I did my crying when he was alive."
Mm,
And when you grow up with those stories, you you see the world in a different way.
yep. I totally feel that. So if anyone who's interested, the Running Wild Anthology of Stories Volume 6 is actually going to be available October 12th. So amazing timing, Rod. And it actually includes a short story by Jonathan Mayberry, a New York Times best-selling author and award-winning author. So definitely check that out. I think you'll really, 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 really enjoy it. So
It's really well edited too.
it is because the editor was Ben, and he is a fabulous editor. He's one of my, like, whenever I have stuff that I need to have edited, Ben is one of the guys I go to and say, "Would you look at this for me and let me know if it sucks?" Uh,
And it never does. And it
because
never does.
we actually just finished doing a 500 word short story. So once I find out when that's going to come out, I'll let you guys know and
That's the 100 word.
oh, 100 word. That's right.
Yeah.
100 word.
Yeah.
Man, that was hard. 100 words was like, woo. That took a lot of creative editing. Let's just put it that way. And even for it to actually have a story arc, it took a lot of creative editing. So, because I am not, uh, what's his name? I'm not brief. Let's just put it that way.
You could have rearranged it into a poem.
I could have. I'm also not a poet. I wish I was. I wish I was a great poet. I love poetry. I'm a huge poetry fan, but I'm not. I can't claim that I'm any good at that either. So, Caroline says, yes, yes, Ben is a great editor. I second that. See?
There we have it.
There we have it. End of story. It's all you got. It's what you get, man. And with that, we've got 3 minutes left. I just want to remind everybody that we are here with you on Thursdays from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern time. And we are here to answer any kind of questions that you may have. It can be around creative writing, publishing, the publishing industry itself, storytelling. It could be about my cat who's right here right now. It could be about, Ben's poetry. It could be about how we write. Whatever you guys want, we're more than happy. Unless you start getting weird. We did have at one point people.
And we'll like that even better.
Well, yeah, I mean, we may say, well, basically, probably say the question and then evade it, but that's fine. Dawn says, thanks, guys. Have a good night. You too. Rod says, thank you for a fun time. As always, man, it's a pleasure. We
Every
love
Thursday.
having a
I
good
will hear
time.
every Thursday.
Every Thursday, man. Leonard Pig says, do you have a favorite poet? I'm gonna let Ben start there. Do you have a favorite poet?
I would go back to Stephen Crane. He's famous for his novellas and his novels, but pick up his poetry. His existential poetry is some of the best. It
Mm,
uh, it has a very distinct point to it. And then, of course, the warrior poets from Wilfred Owen to Keith Douglas, who died in the war and a life cut too short. But Leroy Quintana is an Albuquerque writer
mm,
who has a great book called Interrogations. If you can find it, it's tough to find, but it captures the Vietnam experience very well in very
mm.
short poems that just highlight what he saw in Vietnam. That's just a
Uh,
few.
Rod Gilly says Poe. I love Poe as well. I actually am a huge fan of Ben's poetry.
Very
Uh,
nice.
I mean, that's how, look, that's how I met Ben. Ben submitted a narrative poem to us, and I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. We need to publish this. And I'm actually a huge fan. Christine NG, she's a horror poet, and it's oh my god, it's stunning. Her work is absolutely stunning. And just I actually just like to experiment. I like to check out new stories. So and Leonard Pig says, I dig Charles Bukowski. Man, there are a lot of people on this planet who dig Charles Bukowski.
He can take anything and make it a point. Any
That's
event,
true.
any
Anything.
mind,
I
any bit
agree.
of minutia in society, it's a poem to Bukowski.
Damn straight. So with that thought, um, I think I'm going to thank everybody. Thank you, Ben, again for joining us, and or
Thank
actually
you.
for being a co-contributor or co-conspirator in our Thursday little rampages. And for everyone, we want to thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week. So have a great night.
Have a great week.